Hey, Miss Biggins. All right, the first question is, why do you want to be a teacher? What motivates you? What discourages you?
Why do I want to be a teacher? I was inspired by my high school band director, Mr. Robert Kahn. He was the one who lit the spark, basically. He was the band director at Columbia High School in DeKalb County. And he just let me hang out in the band room. I just loved to practice. I was just a kid that just loved to practice, loved to play. And he never discouraged me. He never turned me away. No matter how late it was, no matter how long I stayed, I was always the first person in the band room and the last one out. So what made me want to become a teacher is I wanted to be more like him. I really did look up to him a lot. What motivates me is reaching as many children as possible. I have this inherent belief that there's a kid out there that just needs a good teacher, and I just focus on that. That's what motivates me. What discourages me at times is, a lot of the times, is the lack of support from administration. It's just always an uphill battle. I don't feel like it's an uphill battle for a math teacher. It's an uphill battle for engagement, for student engagement, and for parent support. But it's never an uphill battle to convince a principal to get more funding for math. It's never a battle to get more funding for STEM, but it's always a battle to get more funding for the arts. And I just think that is what discourages me, is that how could something be that could be so connective and so inspiring for many? People buy tickets to the opera, to the symphony orchestra all the time. You play music in your car. You request musicians for your weddings and for your funerals and for your celebrations, yet you don't want to spend money on having that skill imparted to it as a child. That's just kind of crazy for me. But that's it.
Uh, why did you choose to work in DeKalb County? What are some of the things that drove you there? Or if so, what are some of the things that are pushing you away?
When I was student teaching, I wanted to student teach with a traditional band program. I wasn't really attracted to student teaching with a core style band. So I reached out to my network, which I went to Florida A&M. So I found out who are all the FAMU directors, and all the FAMU directors happened to be clustered into DeKalb County. So I did my student teaching there. And what drew me to it was that, at the time, before Facebook, before everything, there was this so-called network, right? So it's like everybody who was supposedly somebody was in DeKalb. So that's what drew me to it. And that's why I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and teach in DeKalb. I did teach in Fulton for a little bit. And it's a little different because particularly when it comes to like the racial divide of the North versus South, it's not a lot of sharing. Whereas in DeKalb, we share a lot. We share a whole lot of ideas. We share a lot of information. So we are very competitive, but we share more than I realized in other districts. It's everybody kind of cloisters within themselves, which I think is a really bad thing. What drives me away from DeKalb is the lack of structure and resources. So, for example, we have a really huge scheduling problem in DeKalb where you can't get everybody in your band class. So you end up having to teach time and a half for regular pay. So if you really want to work on your program, you're going to have to do it after school, but you don't get paid for after school. And it's frustrating. And, the district will say, well, you got to supplement. But the supplement is for after school rehearsal, not after school class. And you end up having to do after school class plus after school rehearsal. And it was just a toll, it took a toll on me mentally and physically because I had something in my head I wanted, but the physical restraints, were just brutal on your mind and your body and stuff. So that's what drew me to DeKalb.
So I know you teach. You taught high school, and now you teach in elementary school. So, how do you approach student discipline, and what are some of the differences in the approaches from elementary to high school on student discipline?
You'll have to look at it from the vantage point of groups. Secondary school, you deal with discipline, right? Middle school and high school. Elementary school, you deal with classroom expectations, behavioral expectations. You don't want to call it discipline because think about it, your youngest student is 4 and your oldest student is 11. So the 11-year-olds, the 5th graders, they're now having to have the discipline, that kind of thing. But in high school, it was very straightforward. It was either you do or you don't. It's you're gonna follow the rules or you're not gonna follow the rules. For me, I was very autocratic. Very nonchalant about it. It was like, oh, you mispractice, you don't march, and that's it. you know. So they fuss, scream, cuss, whatever. I'm just like, whatever. You know, for elementary school, you can't be so harsh. You have to think about the whole child. You have to really think about what's the teachable moment, what's the teachable lesson. High school, and again, I could be wrong. You know, now they're talking about social and emotional learning. You know, so maybe you can have that a little bit in high school. But I think in high school, the students are much smarter. They're much smarter. They're much more emotionally adept, so they know how to manipulate better. So you have to be more so very firm in what you say and what you do and what you decide, because if you're not, then they get to run the program and not you. You know, and again, secondary level, these are programs. You have your marching band program, your concert band program, your jazz band program. You have programs. That means you have to rely on children to show up, practice their part, perform. You know, elementary school, not so much. Of course, you have chorus in elementary band, but their parents are making the decision for them. So when an elementary school student doesn't show up for a concert, I can't get mad at Johnny for that, because his mama said no. You know, high school, middle school, yes and no. High school, middle school, they kind of are more vocal. Well, I don't want to go practice, you know, and mom will be like, okay, you know, or the mom will say, hey, we're pulling them out of practice, you know, against it. But usually the parent goes forth and says, I'm not going to have them in practice. But if the child says, I want to go to practice, they don't come to practice, you know. So I think with discipline, there are different expectations the older the child is versus the younger the child is. When you're that young of age, you got to be more nurturing. And that's what I learned. My first year teaching elementary school, I was making them kids cry every day. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? And when thankfully a teacher put me to the side, I was like, Mev, no, you need to be a little more calmer. Okay, it's not high school. So, you know, that's the difference between elementary, middle school, and high school. In the beginning, it was strictly how well my band played. And I think that's a bad way to judge your program, and I'll tell you why. Again, you know, when you're building a program, you have to ask yourself as a director, what's your philosophy? Now, some directors are strictly competitive organizations. They could give a hoot about who you are as a person. You need to come to practice, play your instrument, play your part, get the superior, get this win, and whatnot. They leave the entire social and emotional condition of the child up to the household. Nothing wrong with that. That's them. That's what they believe. That's what they will do. The issue is that, you know, you have to know your community. So it's a complicated question, because I judge my success as a teacher on the secondary level prior to how well my students can play, how well my students can learn their scales, how well they could perform, how well they knew their content. If that child moved to another program and that director said, man, somebody taught you, that was a checklist on my end. Now I realized that was wrong, because I was literally sacrificing everything to have an external benefit to myself as a teacher. And the difficult question you have to ask yourself is, again, what are your expectations? Because everybody may not have that. You can't be in every household, and every household may not have that same philosophy, they may not have the same value or what have you, and that's what makes it difficult, because you may want to have that successful competitive program, and honestly, the community just can't afford it. You may be able to convince them, you may be able to convince like a small cohort, like maybe 20 or 30 parents, but that's not an ensemble. That's a class, right? So what makes me a good teacher? I focus now on how I make the students feel. If I make them feel challenged, if I make them feel successful, if I put them in positions where they're successful, that makes me a good teacher. So instead of me trying to go for a level 6 program, if I do a level 3-4 split and they play their best and I make sure that they're prepared and I set them up for success and they make it superior or they make it excellent, I'm a good teacher, because I made sure my kids were put up for success. But some directors may look at you and say, well, you only have a level 3-4 program in a high school, so you suck. And I'm like, you get the figure, because honestly, the expectation when I came into teaching band was, oh, you got to stay all hours of the night and get your band up no matter what, because that's just what you have to do. And I'm learning now in my wisdom is that, life is too short, and you can't teach for other people, and you can't teach for acclaim, and you cannot do not put the community in such a stressful bind to where they have to choose between band and their light bill, or band and this, because honestly it's like a lot of times, particularly like everybody wants to go to Macy's, but people just don't have it to go. So what else is going to be the what's going to be the defining marker if you never go to Macy's? What's going to be the defining marker for you as a teacher? So for me is every student. I have to make sure every student grows to be an accomplished musician, whether that means 2 scales, 4 scales, 6 scales, or all 12 scales. I want to make sure they learn everything. And that's just what I base it on. And thankfully, that's given me a peace of mind where I know each and every day, day in and day out, I have grown as a teacher. I've grown as instructor, and I feel good about what I give my students.
All right, last question. What's your career goals as being an educator? Like, what's the end goal, or what are you aspiring to? And also, Michaela want to say, what's up? Yeah, we getting that work done.
Hey, Michaela. My career goals is interesting. At first, I wanted to be a school principal. I wanted to do be a principal of a fine art school. And so I had aspirations of moving up through the administrative ranks there. But ever since probably like about 5 or 6 years ago, that completely changed. I mean, I am full on in entrepreneur mode. If I could dream boldly, I would really like to be able to, make this music school my full-time endeavor. Have multiple locations, do full-time summer camps and online courses, all that kind of stuff, the whole nine. So I think that my career goals are a little bit unorthodox because they don't seem realistic, but I just have this fire that I just want to be able to teach music on my own terms with a community that is actively engaged. And I just feel like with money, parents are actively engaged. They may not practice at home all the time, but those parents are going to bring them to class every week. They're going to do what they have to do to make sure that they play. And I just find that to be the most rewarding. Every Saturday I get up, what motivates me on the days I don't feel like getting up, on the rainy days, on the cold days, on the hot days, is that there are students waiting on me. And they want to be there. I'm not dragging nobody to come into rehearsal. I'm not begging for a parent to pay dues. They're sitting there waiting for me to teach them. So that, honestly, I feel like I'm living my career goal, which is being able to teach on my own terms without a principal breathing down my neck, without a, snarky coworker, just having an environment where all I need to do is teach to the best of my ability and make sure my students rise to that level of expectation. So that's my career goal. I'm living my career goal. So yeah, the more I can grow this program, the bigger I can make it to where I can do this Monday through Friday. That'll be the ultimate desire for me. All right, y'all keep working, keep studying. I've been there, still there. Looking at doctoral programs now. I just might. That could be a career goal. I have been looking at doctoral programs, but that's like further down the line. But if I were to go back to school, it'll be in curriculum and instruction, and overall curriculum design. So that'd be something that maybe a career goal. But that's it. All right. Well, y'all keep working. All right. Thanks.